Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Today I will be breaking down the rest of the Alpha 3.13 Postmortem. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you guys so much for the support. It is truly appreciated. So as mentioned in my previous video, I will be breaking down the rest of the development lead's thoughts on how they felt Alpha 3.13 and Invictus launch week went. This is following on from yesterday's video where I covered Tony Zurevek's Systemic Services and Tools team segment from the Postmortem, where he talks about the expansion of the economy and cargo, plus dynamic missions and a whole lot more as well. That video is linked in the description below should you want to watch that. But with that said, let's kick off with the vehicle pillar, with John Crew starting by addressing the successful delivery of the long-awaited Merlin and Constellation docking and vehicle naming. Now he mentions the biggest issue with the names and serial numbers are its readability, as the font size remains the same regardless of how long the name is. So they are working with the graphics and UI team on better implementation using building blocks that will dynamically change the font size based on the name length, and also the paint system will have work done to allow players to pick their name colours, which will be very useful. Next up, he speaks about the hull visual degradation, of which ties into their existing production pipeline for vehicles. And what is great is that they didn't have to go back and add it to any ships, making the implementation much quicker. He does mention that there are still a few ships that missed the internal testing sweeps, which left many of the ship canopies looking over scratched, which will be fixed on a case-by-case basis, and in the future they will be moving from this degradation being purely visual to have it structural with gameplay consequences. Now the Tumbrel MT was a straight-to-release surprise vehicle, which was actually designed for theatres of war, they say. It will be great to get another update on theatres and just see how that's progressing. For the Greycat ROC DS, this was originally planned to be the primary vehicle in the ROC family, but unfortunately it had to release after the standard ROC. Now the original plan was to release them together, with these goals slowly releasing by way of capacity and range. However, they were not communicated well enough. As John mentions, it currently sits in a very poor position, but with the future changes to inventory behaviour, the cargo system and cave setups, they hope for it to regain the position that they intended for it. And if not, they will investigate further changes to improve its reception. Now it's interesting that they have acknowledged its failure to deliver, and I am very happy to hear that they are planning many changes for the ROC DS. But I think it's safe to say that if there is any vehicle, item, or basically anything for that matter in the game that does not feel like it belongs or it doesn't feel right, CIG will eventually address it to ensure that it has its place within the verse. Next up, we have the EUPU team with the lead Todd Pappy. For the quantum sensitive and timed multi-drop delivery missions, some of the boxes, he says, didn't behave as expected. The timers would not show the correct time and the box would often explode with 2 minutes remaining. Also, Hurston isn't the best location for long flight missions because of the location distribution, so they did increase the payout there and will look to add continued refinement. Now I'm not sure, but I think these box issues may have been resolved, as I have not experienced this doing these missions and I've done quite a few of them. But with saying that, it would be very nice to see these delivery mission options expand even further, just offering a greater choice of delivery mission types beyond what we have now. But it doesn't appear that 3.14 has anything new mission-wise, unfortunately, unless there is still stuff yet to see when it goes to live. So we'll have to wait and see if there is anything new. For the core gameplay pillar, we have Richard Tyra, firstly speaking about the mounted guns. Now he mentions that with the long-term intention of homesteads and outposts, they want to provide players and AI with additional options for defending these areas, which is where these mounted guns will really come into play. Also, with them using size 1 ship weapons for the mounted guns, they were able to iterate on the FPS integration very early on without having to worry too much about the metrics, and this allowed them to work out issues like the pivot point of the weapon, its viewing angles and aim down sight views. They were a little unsure as to what control scheme to use for the mounted weapons, be it a more FPS centric or something more akin to a ship turret. Thankfully, they had enough time to implement both options, with long-term plans to allow us to choose either option that we prefer. One of the downsides to using size 1 ship weapons is that using them on a mount, they would need to be upside down compared to how they're mounted on ships. And although this is an easy fix, it does require them to have to tweak every weapon that they will mount in the future. Talking of the future, although they wanted to get this feature into the PU ASAP for testing purposes, most likely for something like Squadron 42 or even Theatres of War, they do know there is no real use for them in the PU right now. And they feel like maybe it would have been a better idea to ask for a specific PTU or Evocati test, releasing them in a later patch, which would have given them time to have built a reason to use them in game. Now, I honestly don't mind them bringing things like this into the PU whenever, but they are certainly redundant right now, and holding off for some actual gameplay would have been a great idea. Talking of redundant features, next we have the trolley push and pull, which is, I do really like this feature. I think it's a very cool feature in itself, especially for later on when we do have far more interactable options and reasons to use trolleys and similar items. But one issue that arose was due to them having small wheels, and with ships having very different ramps, some of them with hard angular edges and others not lowering to the floor, caused a lot of problems, resulting in the team unable to provide the full trolley experience. Now for the future, the trolleys and interactable movables will serve two purposes. Firstly, a puzzle mechanic, and secondly, as you would expect, for cargo loading. For the puzzle mechanic, designers will start to create interesting missions and spaces for players to utilize trolleys, for example reaching a higher vantage point. And with the cargo loading mechanic, they are planning to release a hover trolley that will alleviate a lot of the issues, relying on the traditional wheeled trolleys to serve landing zones and specific missions. Now personally, it always looked like the wheeled trolleys were going to be a bit of an issue, but having a choice of wheeled and hover will be nice, and maybe leaving the wheeled trolleys in your hangar for moving stuff around in there, and then loading the hover trolleys into your ships to take with you should you need to use them on a mission. Basically, I just like having both options. Now finally, on to locations with Ian Leyland. For locations in Alpha 3.13 and Invictus Week, we had the Tobin Convention Centre, the new space station docking modules, and the military docks for the event. He also mentions that outside of the Alpha 3.13 release, it allowed the team to really focus on making solid progress on future locations for the game, but he doesn't specify what. For features like docking, this caused a lot of back and forth amongst the various teams involved, reducing efficiency, and the trolley push and pull feature created a lot of bugs for the team that could have been reduced. So for the future, when it comes to features like docking, with the team being very compressed in building both the feature and creating the location at the same time, to reduce the inefficiency, they will look to maybe have a bit more of a buffer between the features being made and the locations being made to utilize them. So I guess what he means here is creating the feature a while before they plan to create the use cases for them in the game would be a better approach, so they are not doing both at the same time, which does make sense to me. So that is the 3.13 and Invictus launch week post-mortem. Again, I have linked the Systemic Services and Tools segment video in the description below. That went up yesterday. Be sure to subscribe if you do enjoy my content. We do have a Star Citizen Sunday back tomorrow. There just hasn't been enough content with the lack of Inside Star Citizens and Star Citizen Lives to warrant a full video. So I'm happy that that is able to return tomorrow. Also, do come and follow me over on twitch.tv/supermacbrothers Ryan. You are all more than welcome over there. We are having a good time just checking out all that 3.14 has to offer. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a huge favour, and tick that bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live. Again, huge thank you to my patrons and channel members, your support is amazing. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.